Hear no video. I can't hear anything. Okay.
Okay, very good. So we, the first appointment will be 2.1, where we're going to appoint somebody to fill Region 1's seat. And the way the process works, for the sake of the viewing public, board members are allowed to nominate whomever they would like who's applied for the position. We'll go around the table to get those nominations. We'll start with Ms. Creech. If somebody has already nominated someone you're supporting, there's no need to nominate that person again. After the nominations are on the floor, discussion will ensue. You can make comments about who you'd like to support. All comments will remain positive. And then after we close that portion of it, we'll go around the table and each board member can say, Ms. Smith, Mr. Jones, whoever it is. The person, if there's not a clear majority, we need 4. The person who received the fewest amount of votes would drop off, and then we'll go back around the table again. Any questions on that?
So the first time around, we're just saying who we nominate, or are we giving it the explanation?
Yeah, if I can say something, I would just say, just take nominations from the floor. You don't have to go around and point to each person, but someone just be recognized by the chair and then just put the nomination in, okay?
Okay, sounds good. Any other questions? All righty, opening the floor for nominations for Region 1.
I nominate Dr. Tammy McMillan.
Dr. Tammy McMillan. Okay, got it.
Hi, I'd like to nominate Alicia Saunders.
Okay,
I'd like to nominate Robert Flanagan.
We're just doing Region 1 first.
Oh,
yeah, that's
I'm
the other.
sorry.
That's okay, Terry. Anybody else?
I'd like to nominate Dr. Tamara Ellen Thomas.
Okay,
I'd like to nominate Ms. Dawn Gold.
okay. We have 4 nominees on the floor. Opening the floor for comments.
Who are the nominees, please? Mike?
Bridget nominated,
Everyone.
well, everybody's nominated, John, all 4 candidates.
Okay. Did someone say who was the 4th candidate and get their name?
Ms. Gold.
Miss Gold. Okay.
Mhm.
All right. Thank you. All right.
All righty. Okay, any thoughts, observations? About anybody?
I'm happy to share a little bit. Sorry, I'm squeaking up on your chair. I just want to thank all of the applicants for taking the time to apply for this position. I myself applied for an appointment before I was elected, and I was not appointed. So if you happen to be a person who was not appointed tonight, know that you can still run for election in the future if you would like any assistance going through that process. I'm happy to help walk you through if this is something that you're passionate about. And, I know from having gone through that process how stressful it can be. So I just want to say thank you, all of you, for your patience, your time, and especially during the sort of break and when we weren't all able to be in person having these interviews. It's a lot. And I just want to thank all of you for doing it and for your commitment to Woodland House.
Thank you. Ms. Creech.
See, yes, I'll go. Full disclosure, sometimes I may switch to Spanish, just naturally happens. So I apologize now every time I do it. So full disclosure, I actually am associated with 3 of our 4 nominees, and I could speak concerning each of them. The reason why I elected to nominate Dr. McMillan is because on the onset preset of the opportunity, the seat became available, I reached out and encouraged her to apply because of her educational experience and vested interest within our district, the work that I've seen her do in her professional capacity with Hosanna House, as well as at the collegiate level now with Carlow College. So her investment in our community and the work that she's done within our community as well as professionally, I see her as a viable asset to the team that we have right now.
Thank you. Anybody else? Mr. Scott?
So I personally nominated Dr. Alan Thomas because she has experience in several different areas within the K-12 system. She has spent her career applying the knowledge that she does have into practice and when provided opportunities to do so. And this is another opportunity which she would have to do that. She has a subject matter expertise that the board currently does not have. And I think that that would be a valuable asset as we seek to establish learning goals and bring all stakeholders together to ensure the best outcomes for scholars. Just a few areas that I wanted to point out in terms of that subject matter expertise were teaching, curriculum development. She was the curriculum supervisor of mathematics for the PBOAG. She identifying where school and community supports are needed. She has experience doing that. She has an understanding of how to apply creative and innovative trends within education, which I think is something that we should definitely be exploring. She's also, one of the biggest things was in terms of internal and external communication, she seems to be very adept at that. And I think that's something we obviously could use her skills on. So.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Reed?
I nominated Ms. Gold because of her dedication to the community and also her administrative background. And so I feel as though she would be a great asset to the board.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
Mr. Bowman, if I could add, I didn't speak specifically about Ms. Saunders and why I nominated her, but of the folks that we interviewed, she was the first one to really mention policy being a main part of the role of the board. And she is someone that I've seen in attendance at board meetings since before I was elected. So her commitment to the district seemed really evident to me. We don't know each other personally, although we did get a chance to perform together in the alumni musical. So we do have some interests in heart too together. So yeah, I think those are the reasons why I wanted to make sure that she made it onto the nominations list as well.
Thank you. I'll tag on to that for Ms. Saunders. I've seen her involved. I see her commenting on stuff and doing stuff directly with the district, and having graduated from Woodland Hills and lived in the district her whole life, and I think 4 different towns, speaks to her commitment to advocating for Woodland Hills. So I appreciate what she's done. Hi, everybody. Any other comments about the candidates? All right, we will go around the table and
I wanted to say something, Mike. Was there any
Go ahead,
public
John.
comments? Any public comments at all that needed to be made, or did you take care of that earlier?
we can do that again. We did
Okay,
mention
you did it
that.
already. That's fine. Don't do it again. Okay.
Okay. All right, Ms. Creech.
Dr. McMillan?
Okay,
Ms. Saunders.
okay. Terry.
Ms. Saunders.
Okay,
Alan Thomas.
Dr. McMillan?
did you keep up with that, Terry? Okay, and I'm Ms. Saunders.
Okay, so it was 2 for Dr. McMillan, 3 for Ms. Saunders, 1 for Dr. Alan Thomas.
Okay, thank you. Got it. Okay, Dr. Thomas then drops off, and then we'll go back around the table and cast our votes one more time. Ms. Creech?
So it would be, excuse me, I'm sorry, Ms. Gold didn't receive any nominations either. So Ms. Gold will be off and Dr. Alan Thomas
Correct.
off. Okay. And now it's between Dr. McMillan and Ms. Saunders.
Correct. Ms. Creech?
Okay, so another question. Can
Yeah.
I ask a question right now?
Yes.
Is there more discussion or are we just?
No,
going
I mean,
to
you
go?
can, but it's.
Now we just keep going?
Yeah, may as well.
Okay. Dr. McMillan.
Okay.
Ms. Saunders.
Ms. Saunders,
Dr. McMillan,
Dr. McMillan.
Dr. McMillan,
Ms. Saunders?
Okay.
So that time it was 4 for Dr. McMillan and 3 for Ms. Saunders.
Okay.
Dr. McMillan's the new board member. Congratulations.
That's it.
congratulations, Dr.
Congratulations, Dr. McMillan.
Okay, now we'll move on to tab 2.2 to approve a new person for Region 2. We'll follow the same process. Any nominations for either our candidates?
I'm going to nominate Mr. Flanagan.
And I'd like to nominate Tara Sherry Torres, please.
Okay. Both candidates have been nominated. Now we'll open the floor for comment.
I geared my nominee toward Mr. Flanagan based on the fact that he is a well-experienced lifetime Woodland Hills resident and stakeholder. And I think that he would add a little bit of expertise to the board in areas where we may need it. He's sat on several boards. I see his commitment. I see his obligation. And I also see his thorough documentation and he's very transparent in his communication. And I think that's also something that the school board, our constituents, and our stakeholders need to see. So that's why I gear my nominee toward Mr. Flanagan.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Lawson.
Thank you.
And in speaking about Ms. Sherry Torres, I would just like to say I'm excited by her enthusiasm and the fact that she has a background in social work, which I think it could be a real asset to our district. I appreciate that she is a parent of a young child just about to be school age. So I think that that's a fresh perspective that's not already being represented on our board. And in the interest of full disclosure, she was a former prenatal yoga client of mine when she was pregnant with her daughter. And so we know each other in that capacity as well.
Okay. Thank you.
My nomination?
Yep.
Mr. Flanagan.
We're voting.
Oh, are we voting now?
Yeah.
Okay.
You
Did
guys.
anybody else have any more
Any
discussion?
comments? Okay.
I'm going to go with Ms. Torres.
Okay.
Mr. Flanagan.
Mr. Flanagan,
Mr. Flanagan,
Mr. Flanagan.
All right.
Bob, are you here? There you are.
There he is. Brought his client.
Okay. The next step, congratulations, everybody.
Congratulations, Mr. Flanagan. Welcome to the school.
Teresa now takes care of the swearing in.
Are both candidates here? Or just the one?
Dr. McMillan's virtual.
So we'll do them both together. Can you come up, please? Dr. McMillan, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I think it's best if Dr. McMillan can be sworn in person. I think we went through that earlier, but I think, quite frankly, if Dr. McMillan, if you can stop by to see Ms. Hawthorne tomorrow or at your convenience to be officially sworn in, that'd be fine. I would suggest that if we have any, we can afford. Well, I don't know if we're going to be doing any other actual voting tonight, but I think that Dr. McMillan can be treated as a board member as far as discussion goes tonight. If you have anything you want to say, that would be great. Okay.
That'll be fine. I am out of town. I won't be back in Pittsburgh until Wednesday morning. So I will stop past to see Teresa once I get back in town.
Great. Thanks.
Okay, Mr. Clancy, you ready? Congratulations. Bring it right now. And repeat after me. Name is blank. I
I,
state your name.
Robert Flanagan May,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support,
that I will support,
obey, and defend
obey, and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States,
and Constitution of this Commonwealth,
the Constitution of this Commonwealth,
and that I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity.
and I will discharge this office with fidelity.
Congratulations.
Well, if you want, Mr. Flanagan.
Yeah, have him,
Uh,
have him join, set up the table.
You can use,
We're making you work,
There's-
Mr. Flanagan, sorry.
yeah.
I
Sorry.
be able to stay.
That's fine.
Okay.
Okay. Alrighty, at this point, we've completed our two appointments. Now we're move on to old business. Does anybody have anything they'd like to bring up under old business?
I'd like to make a motion that we add to the agenda a discussion about the current COVID safety protocols in our buildings.
Actually, we can do that after discussion.
Okay, that's fine.
We
Should I
can do
make
that.
a motion to discuss it then?
Just bring it up, old business like discuss.
Great, old business. Let's talk about what's going on in our buildings as it pertains to COVID. Everyone's got feelings on this and I brought 2 pages worth of questions. So, I, first of all, in hearing from the public, like to know how we are clearly communicating who comprises the COVID response committee. On the website, the listing is from 2020 and hasn't been updated. These decisions are being made. They're not being made publicly. And I think at the very least, we owe the public an explanation for who is in charge of making those decisions and who is sitting in those meetings.
Okay, would anybody like to speak to who is on our advisory committee?
If we need to update that, that needs to be updated yesterday and needs to be on the website right now.
Absolutely. Good evening, everybody.
Mr. Wilson?
So I'm looking for the emails from you, Mr. Belmont, noting the new COVID response team as appointed by the board. I believe that it is myself, Ms. Golden, Ms. Mans, Ms. Hawthorne. And I feel like I'm missing one more person. Those are the individuals that I'm aware of.
What date is that email?
That was after the meeting that we had on
Thursday.
Thursday, December 30th. That's right.
And then Dr. Connie and Mr. Morse are our data medical folks
Absolutely.
that help us with that.
So the board didn't vote on that committee, that to my knowledge.
Right.
Do we want to discuss expanding that committee to include more building leadership, more stakeholders? The previous iteration back in 2020 had a list of, I want to say close to 30 individuals on it, including all of the school nurses. By the way, Edgewood still doesn't have a school nurse. If you know a school nurse who would like a job, please have them apply for that. My child would love to have a nurse in her school.
Can I interject on that?
Yeah.
So the committee that we're referring to, what happened to that? When we first began COVID, my understanding was that was the committee that was formed, that the names that she's listing with the nurses, et cetera.
Yeah.
So once, was it like after CDC's changed, did that sort of disseminated, or was that always supposed to be the team?
That is an excellent question, Ms. Creech. That committee was run by somebody who's no longer in employment
Right.
with the district, and I don't know what the transition process might have been.
Yeah, and several members of the original committee are no longer employed with the district or are no longer seated board members. So I think partially it is just outdated. And the other part of it was that once the state of emergency was lifted, there was no longer a pressing need to have this committee in action, despite the fact that the pandemic has never gone away. So what I'm asking tonight is that we decide among all of us here who is going to be on that committee and commit to what that committee is aiming to accomplish.
Who would you like to suggest to put on?
Well, so in the interest of having it be more fair and a clearer representation of the district at large, I think we need some folks from each building. I don't want to presume who those folks should be because I know so many of our staff are already stretched so thin. But I think we should have conversations with the building principals and see if there are specific folks in mind who have a vested interest in this issue. The nurses do seem like an obvious choice, but considering we don't have nurses in every building, that could be hard to make that happen. I do think we need to have not more than 4 board members as a part of it, who are committed part of it, who can be in whatever meetings or Zooms have to take place as these decisions are being made. We can't make a decision that affects hundreds of families, thousands of families in our district without being very clear on how we came to those decisions. So simply saying the 4 people on this committee who we trust told us to do this, so we're just going to go ahead and do it, is not good enough.
Do you want to, does anybody on the board?
I mean,
Have
I think I'm
interest,
making it pretty clear. I'm happy to continue to be on there. I was on the original one in 2020. And that, like, as someone who was listed in that book on the original one in 2020, was not explained to me why that dissolved, or I know we have had staffing changes, but this is really important and it needs to be handled right now.
So you're interested in staying?
I'm absolutely interested in
Of
staying.
course, yeah.
I see a head going up and down. Anybody over here want to, Ms. Reed would like to do it? That's 3. Mr. Clanning, that means a new person automatically gets put there. I'm kidding. Well, we have 3 to start.
I
And
can do it if you didn't want.
Ms. Curry?
Ms. Curry was on it originally as well, just as a point of reference.
Okay.
That's-
Oh, I'll cede that. I'm happy to, I'll stay there. Okay,
I'm fine.
I'll stay there. All right. All right, Ms. Reed,
So no.
Ms. Creech, Ms. Scott, myself will do that now. Ms. Scott, who did you have in mind? Not specific names, but you mentioned nurses from the buildings.
I think,
Who else?
yeah, I mean, I think we should have at least one representative from each of the 5 buildings, and I think we probably need someone else from admin, I don't know, maybe facilities, if they're not stretched too thin, to weigh in, because I think a lot of the big concerns in terms of mitigating this particular variant have to do with how well we can implement safety procedures in the buildings with fidelity. So I don't know if Mr. Finney or someone on his staff has the capacity to be a part of those conversations, but I think that would be well worthwhile.
Mr. Finney is his staff.
I understand.
I'm sorry, Mr. Finney.
Is that, okay. All right, we have central administration represented as far as the buildings go.
I think it might behoove us to have someone from the community support committee or the PTAs for each building representing, to sort of speak for the collective voice of families. And maybe they will have less weight in the decision-making because they're not officials within the district. But I do think it's important that we're hearing from families as we make these decisions.
And I think everybody would agree with that. Which group were you thinking of pulling from?
I mean, again, I think it really just depends. I want there to be equal representation for all 5 of our buildings and all 9 of our boroughs and townships. You know, the PTA seems like an obvious choice to me if we want to reach out, or the parent organizations of each building. Because I know at Turtle Creek it's PI, and at some of the schools it might be PTO. But I think that would be like a worthwhile place to start. And then if there isn't interest or capacity for a representative from each of those buildings to come in via that way, maybe the community support committee could be our next tier in terms of recruiting a voice of the community.
I would suggest perhaps that parent advisory board from each of the schools rather than the PTO, because a lot of people aren't. It seems that most parents are more active with the parent advisory group than the PTO.
Okay, so we've identified stakeholders being parent group, building administrators. Let's focus on parent group first. Ms. Creech is thinking the advisory committee from each building might be, you might have more luck with interest from that group.
I don't know how to really say it. I mean, you know, you can chime in on what I'm saying, but as far as participation and engagement, we have a larger percentage of parents that are on the call
Mhm.
for advisory than in a PTO meeting per se, correct?
Yes.
So I was just saying that you would reach more parents that
I
way.
think that's absolutely true, but I would argue that the level of engagement is stronger in the parent organizations because instead of showing up for a call once a month, they show up and volunteer in the buildings and they're doing more hands-on things. Although I'm definitely open to either, and no offense to any parent who can only manage to get onto the parent advisory committee calls, those are important too. We just want to make sure that whoever is assigned to this is going to actually participate. I don't want to just there be a placeholder name representing a group that's not actually being spoken for.
Mhm.
Okay, is there a downside to reaching out to each group in each building to gauge interest?
No,
One,
I don't think
why
so.
don't we start there?
Yeah.
You guys okay with that?
Well, so the only challenge that I'm seeing right now is who decides which parent is going to represent what school, because that was the problem that we ran into a few years ago when the advisory committee was formed per school, that there was pushback, parents that wanted to represent the school, and how do you pick which one? So.
Well, let me throw this out. We're thinking out loud here. What if you said to the group, hey, we need one representative to participate, be a member of what we're doing. Leave it up to them to decide who it is they want to have represent them. Does that make sense?
I think that's going to be harder to pull off in the parent advisory group because they're not a governing agency that has voting powers the way that like a PTA or a PI or a PTO would be. And so I think that could unintentionally sort of isolate the folks who may be interested, who are involved, but not in the parent organization with a due paying structure and all of that stuff that goes along with that.
Okay, I have another question. So I feel like it's just us talking.
Yeah, sure.
So,
Hi,
just
neighbor.
thinking out loud,
Yeah.
right? So if it's that the parent representative isn't weighing as much as, those who are the rest of the individuals that we named,
Yeah,
what if we're sending like a quick little survey as far as the information we want to get from them? Then it doesn't necessarily matter how, if you have like 4 parents, or
Sure.
you have several,
yeah,
then that's their form of input, is that, that information is disseminated through those 2 groups that we just talked about. So we're gathering the information of questions that we may have or concerns and getting feedback from our parents in that manner, as opposed to it being like this one person is the one who's the spokesperson.
yeah, maybe it's a survey and that's how we gauge the community interest.
Okay.
And if that, so what's most important is this needs to exist yesterday. So we don't want to spend a lot of time being bogged down in the processes of trying to figure out who needs to represent what. We need to get the information. We need to discuss the information among that published list of people who are involved in having these conversations surrounding decision-making. And then we need to have a very clear, robust conversation like we're having now about what our next steps are. Right now, we have kids coming into the building when the cases are higher than they've ever been in our county. We have no specific criteria that we're using to decide when at all to go virtual. Is it based on case numbers? Is it based on the number of staff out? This is the information. This is the reason parents are feeling afraid to send their kids to school. They don't have any information to go off of. And we have not been clear and transparent with any part of this. And it's scary for them. So we could be seeing a completely different temperature in our community in terms of their trust of us and their, willingness to believe that we are strong leaders if we just told them why we are doing the things we're doing.
So backing up, as far as who you want to be on this group, how do you want to leave that part of it?
I think that we need to reach out. I know that the community or the parent engagement committee or whatever, what's that one called? Advisory, thank you. Is tonight usually the week that they meet?
It's the second week.
Okay, thank you. So that's next week. We should maybe put something together, a survey. Sorry, I'm looking at my calendar. I think it's important that if we're gonna have building representatives, and I don't feel qualified to decide who that representative should be, but it might be a teacher and not a nurse, or it might be a school psychologist or a social worker in that building. But we need to talk to the buildings and ask them who within their staff has the capacity and willingness to do this ASAP. I don't want to sit here and speculate as to who is going to be the best person for that role without consulting those people. I don't think that's fair to them. But we do need someone who is actually in those buildings, speaking about what's actually happening in those buildings versus what we're being told is happening in those buildings. Because as both Dr. Conti and Mr. Morse said on Thursday's call, the only way we can actually keep kids safe and sort of mitigate the spread is if we are implementing those safety measures with fidelity. And I, for one, do not believe and am not confident that that is happening right now, today, in all 5 buildings.
So back to how we get people to become part of this committee. Let's focus on what that, we want to do a survey. We've all agreed on that.
That's for the parents. That's for the parent portion.
Parent-
For
Now,
the
who-
building and
How are we going to come up with the survey? Who wants to put together those survey questions?
So I just want to be clear, right? I'm learning. This team, I know you said everyone who was on it is not here. Because I could say automatically, I'm happy to do that, not a problem. But is that for me to do, or do we have, anyone who's spearheading the team, for lack of a better word?
Oh, no, actually, the board can actually do this. I mean, we can come up with surveys and we can absolutely, if we want to run past our administrator, say, proof this for me.
well, can we work with Andrew to help with that? Because
We
it's
can do that
communications
too.
related.
Andrew is, for you folks that don't know, he's our representative from the IU, and part of his service is communications. So, Andrew, I think you're on the call, aren't you?
Yes, he's on.
Yes, I am.
Hey, good evening, Andrew. Would you be willing to help us put together that survey?
Sure, I can help, put together a survey that would be on Google Forms, which is what the district has used in the past for previous surveys. And I would just need some guidance on the type of questions that you guys would want answered. That would be the biggest key, and information from the district that would be required is just the kinds of questions that need to be answered or that you're seeking information for.
Okay,
I'm happy to help him with that. Is there anyone else who wants to work on that?
okay. Andrew, you and Ms. Creech are going to be doing that, and if anyone else wants to join.
Yeah, I think we keep it short. I think we keep it concise, like, first question, like maybe it's ranked, like on a scale of 1 to 10, how much is your concern, how close your child is to other scholars? How much is your concern? How much of your concern is the way masks are or are not being worn by students and staff? How much of your concern is having buildings open at all? And just sort of gauge interest so that we can see overall trends, because I think that'd be the best way for us to take that information and use it as quickly as possible. Because time is of the essence right now. COVID waits for no one. We've got to get moving on this.
So you indicated fewer questions would probably be better.
Yes.
How do the rest of the group feel about that? Keep it as succinct as possible. Okay. You got that part of it.
Mhm.
Anything else we need to give direction to for Bridget and Andrew?
I
think
might
that's-
suggest just that the form include a text box. That way we can identify common themes that can't be addressed within just certain
Yeah,
specific questions.
Okay.
absolutely. I think every survey should include other opinions or what else did we miss, kind of.
Okay. Anything else on that piece of it? We're good. Okay, now to the building administration part of it. We felt that sounds like we'd like to have our nurses be a part of the group. Anybody feel differently?
Principals and teacher representation if they have.
Maybe folks from the teachers union to sort of offer their perspective as well.
Teachers. Okay, the rep in each building, we can approach them. Okay,
In the interim, and maybe what we need to be sort of figuring out once we narrow that down as soon as possible. Now, I know like the parent advisory committee meetings are next week. I think the PTAs and PTOs are sort of sprinkled throughout the month. So we might not have all of that information, but at the very least, we can get that survey out to those orgs to get out to their membership before their next meeting, which
Okay.
is imperative so that we can see trends and start to analyze that data. What we need to do first and foremost is put together a visible, very well distributed list of what we are doing to mitigate the spread of COVID in our buildings. so that people know what they are sending their kids into. Because when they don't know, they speculate wildly. And that's what's happening right now. And I understand that the timing of the holiday break did not work out with the surge in the new Omicron variant, and none of us could have planned for that. And a million people were out on vacation, except for us who aren't paid, who had to spend our entire break talking about this and doing every meeting. So we're doing it. If you at home don't see or realize that we're doing it, I apologize to you. But there was one day this entire break that I did not have a call or a Zoom meeting about something school board related, and that was Christmas Day. Also, you're all welcome to run for school board. Please do. Please run in the future. I want to know what we can do immediately to start making sure our kids are as safe as possible. Do we have kids eating in their classrooms again? Because we're already overcrowded in at least one building. And the biggest concern from the parents that I've heard from is those cafeterias. I asked my daughter today and they were still eating in the cafeteria at Edgewood. I don't know what's going on in other buildings, but I think that's the very smallest, easiest thing. And we did it when they were on hybrid to mitigate the potential for getting groups of students together with other students, right? That seems like the easiest no-brainer way for me. And I know that becomes more complicated in the higher grades in middle and high school because they're switching classes and they're not in one group moving through their day. But I think that seems pretty obvious to me as something we should be considering. And again, when we asked Mr. Finney before the break about the cleanliness of the buildings, he gave his impressions, but I need to know right now what is being done and is it being implemented with fidelity in all 5 buildings? Because I'm hearing vastly different experiences from people in different buildings.
Ms. Scott, why don't we, we'll start with Bob, but Bob, hang on one second. Just to be sure we're clear on stakeholders to be a part of our advisory group. Is everybody clear on what Ms. Creech is going to be doing? Okay. All right. Mr. Finney, would you mind updating us, please, on how often we clean the buildings, how we do it and all that?
Mike, before he does, if I can,
Yeah, John.
I'm going to have to sign off in a minute or two.
Okay.
And if you need me, you can call me later. But the what I would just say is, for the sake of the record, I think the board agrees that we're changing the agenda to address this, given the emergency nature of COVID. That is correct, board members?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. Anybody have any disagreement with that?
No.
Seeing none, just so the record reflects that that's why we're talking about this right now, given the emergency nature of the COVID Omicron situation. So,
All right. Thanks. See you later.
Yeah.
Mr. Finney.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
So again, like we mentioned, when this all first started back out in 2020, we were already ahead of the game. When we bought the supplies, we were using a really bad chemicals from Centos. And so we're using hospital grade chemical even before COVID broke out. So we're ahead of the game. The staff has been trained multiple times on the new chemicals. They're using a chemical on our classroom desk that they're supposed to spray and wipe each and every day. You're supposed to let it spray and let it set for 5 minutes for kill time. If you could let it set longer, it's better, but we don't have that kind of time because we got a whole building to clean. So the ratio is 5 minutes, spray it, go back and wipe. That is the protocol on that. And then we have our foggers that we bought foggers. We never had foggers. We fog the buildings. Right now, we're fogging the buildings on Fridays, or if we have an area that we had a COVID case in, it gets a totally deep clean, and then we fog that area. That is the protocol right now. Prior to that, we were fogging our buildings on a Monday through Friday, plus if there was COVID cases on top of that. That's where we're at with that, with the cleaning. Okay. There's signs, pictures outside classroom doors that they should still be there. What is being cleaned on a daily basis. The only thing that we're not doing is we're not signing our name and writing the date that we did it, because it takes more time and it takes more time away from them cleaning. So I took that down so they could concentrate on their cleaning. We just left up the list of things that's being cleaned on a daily basis. So that puts the teacher's mind at peace, or administration, et cetera. So those things are still posted outside our buildings. Okay. The water fountains are still taped off with the red tape, or another piece of tape if there wasn't red tape available. We're not supposed to be drinking from the water fountains. We have bottle fillers, which we never had until 2020. Some areas at the high school, I think we're missing one bottle filler at the high school, which is the athletic wing, which we have it, which is going to be put in place within the next couple of weeks. So that's the cleaning aspect. Is there anything else on the cleaning stuff?
Is that itemized list published on our website or anywhere that families can access?
Don't remember if it is on our website or not. I'm not 100% sure.
It
on
would be
that.
great if we could get it there because I think that's usually like the first.
Because I have each school labeled, like the cleaning list, it says Dixon Preparatory STEAM Academy. Now Woodland Hills High School has its own. So I didn't do that for per building.
Yeah,
So if you want me to put it, I could put all of our buildings on it so they can see what it looks like, because they're identical. It's just the name changes.
yeah,
on top.
I think that'd be helpful because like I said, I think a lot of the concern and fear is because there's no hard concrete information to go on. So people are just speculating. So if we can say this is a checklist and this is what's being done. And I'm also curious if there's a way that we can like electronically do those check marks so that when your staff has completed that room and there is a record of that a teacher could refer to without taking the time to sign their name. If they have a phone with them or a device that they could just like check a check mark on. I don't know if that's something that we could implement or like a task list that just renews each day.
Again, it's just more time consuming. They got 7 hours to clean their section.
Yeah,
And that's with their 2 15-minute breaks and their half-hour lunch break. So the more stuff that they have to document and cell phones and all that stuff, it's just going to take more time away from cleaning their areas, quite honestly.
yeah, I'm curious if there's a way that we could have a better system of checks and balances in place so that we know without a shadow of a doubt that cleaning was done per the protocol and there's no question about it.
Mr. Finney, it sounds like you guys have been keeping up with the required number of cleanings as per the guidelines state.
Correct.
So Ms. Scott's concern is helping the public understand that. So that's where we are right now. So how can we help Bob with that? Any ideas?
Also, if we get complaints, if an area was missed, by a teacher will communicate that with myself, or actually communicates with the custodian first if he or she missed something. That's always been a protocol. Even when I started out as custodian, a teacher would ask me, Bob, hey, you forgot the trash in my trash can, or you missed my chalkboard. The teachers always would communicate with the employee. And if it's something that was continuous, it would come to me or to the principal of the high school. And once it reached myself or the principal, then we would go to that person and say, hey, this is what you missed. And then we would follow back up within 3 days, 4 days to make sure he or she didn't miss that same thing again. That is the protocol that I've been using in 24 years that I've been doing it. And I started this when I was working at UPMC Hospital.
So Bob,
And also, please don't forget, we added not only the foggers, we got brand new Kivak machines, which is touchless cleaning our bathrooms. And now we're getting ready to board approve T3 floor machines, which is non-chemical with UV lights that will kill all bacteria and germs. We're getting ready to purchase them for our schools, which our schools never had. And when I came here, I bought 3 of them, put them in place when I first got hired here. Again, these are things that I learned from UPMC and that I have enrolled here, that I've enrolled at Upper St. Clair, that I've enrolled at Montour School District. So the same thing that I enrolled there, I'm implementing here at Woodland Hills.
so in an effort to Marilyn's point, have folks gain confidence, Bob's laid out some strong points. Thank you, Mr. Finney, for doing that. Going forward, back to the question, your guys don't have enough time to do all the checks. They barely have enough time to get done what they can get done. So what is it we can communicate to put out there that tells our families, hey, this is being done. It's being done regularly. It's being done as required is the key phrasing there. Any thoughts on that?
Maybe just what Mr. Finney has already mentioned, maybe updating the website clearly and concisely across all schools of exactly what's being done, how often, and just for safety. Yes, I work 911, so safety is always first. Maybe list those chemicals. We don't know if there's an allergy. We don't know,
Those are on our website.
Those are
All
there?
the chemicals are on our current
Cool.
website
Great.
under
I'm sorry.
facilities.
Thank
They've been there since, and I'm required to do that on a yearly basis. I'm required to update our chemical list on a yearly basis.
Okay, thank you.
So that's already on it.
Food to grow on. Thank you, Mr. Finney, for that.
You're
So as long as we, I think, communicate that electronically, that's something everybody has access to. And it's kind of clear and concise as long as we keep it updated.
And also, please keep in mind, we have 54 employees. 9 of them are maintenance guys. The rest of them are custodians. Custodians get sick. So when a custodian's sick, because we don't have no subs. So we're asking those custodians to cut corners in their area to clean somebody else's area too. So we gotta put that in grant for that as well. And we're going through that because our people get sick. They get sick with COVID and they get sick with other things. Not only that, their kids are getting sick. So it's a domino effect. And it's not just with us, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
And I know as a district with my staff, we are doing the best we can with what we have.
Respect it.
Yeah, and I want to make it clear that I didn't mean to imply that you guys weren't already doing that. I just meant that we needed to clearly communicate that more broadly. I've heard from a number of parents, especially at Dixon, with concerns, and it was my understanding that they were down a custodian or there was a short staffing issue there. If there are specific concerns that family members have because they're hearing from their scholars that classrooms are dirty, not just like not sanitized, but dirty, how's the best way to have those concerns addressed?
Again, when that happened, we terminated somebody.
Okay.
And somebody resigned because they weren't doing their job.
Okay, I wasn't sure if that had been resolved completely
It was
because,
totally resolved, and we had that discussion probably about 6 weeks ago here about that. So
okay,
all that stuff has been squashed, and we've also put new hires in that place that have been cross-trained for 2 weeks. Now he's doing a great job. We haven't got one complaint since he's been on that floor on the 3rd floor.
okay,
We are
great.
short one person at Dixon, and that is the 1st floor job. And that job's been vacant, I think, 3 weeks. If you don't want to count the holidays, it's 3 weeks.
Yeah,
That person, he's going to be board approved in January
okay,
for Dixon.
thank you. I appreciate that, and I appreciate you speaking publicly about that.
Thank you, Mr. Finney.
I have one more question related to facilities, not specifically to the COVID mitigation, but in coming to the conclusion to ban spectators from sports for both our teams and other teams that utilize our facilities, hearing from a lot of parents who have feelings about that. So if you are in the capacity to speak about the part why that we came to that decision and just sort of like publicly address that, that could really help a lot of folks at home.
I wasn't part of the decision.
Okay,
I found out, it was after lunch when I found out, and I've actually reached out to Ms. Frankie if she could forward me the email, because I didn't see it, that we were doing that.
okay,
Because I want to make sure that anything that I rent out, that I am following with athletics doing. So we're across the board doing everything the right way. So after I received that information, I called the people up that are renting our facilities out, Metro Basketball. You know, we got people soccer at Wilkins, we got basketball players at Edgewood.
Edgewood, yeah.
I called all of them and told them that it's only coaches and kids until further notice.
Thanks for following up on that,
Thank
Bob.
you.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Mr. Finney.
Well, I'm
Maybe Ms.
continuing that
Frankie
question.
Can elaborate on
Yes.
why there's limited spectators.
That
Is
it?
she here?
Is Ms. Frankie?
Thank you,
here?
Mr. Finney.
was here.
Good.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I don't have anything else for facilities. Thank you.
Ms. Frankie.
She's coming.
right
Okay.
Or is Dr. Conti on the call too? Because I think he informed that decision as well.
Just
She did.
Frankie.
Yeah, it was from
She
the
can
letter from him.
elaborate on
Yes,
that.
yes.
Hello, Ms. Frankie.
Happy holidays.
Hi,
How
thank you.
doing?
That came on the recommendation of Dr. Conti. So he and I believe Ms. Golden, Principal Mans, made that decision and I supported it 100% because it was the goal to be able to maintain our programs continuing in athletics versus having fans, potential cases, and then having to shut down because of spectators. So I was not a part of the official decision, but I supported it wholeheartedly. And since it is kind of like open to be discussed at a later date, I'm going by a 2-week timeline.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I informed all of the teams that we are playing this week and next week, and I told the coaches and the families as well, hopefully come the 14th, around that time, we will revisit the decision moving forward, depending on how many cases we have with just our general population, our athletics team because we even had to reschedule a basketball game, not by our fault or anyone's fault, but because a team we were playing this week is quarantined. So it's happening. And so it was just out of like, we continue to say an abundance of caution. We want to see our scholar athletes be able to play. And I've spoken with Roxmore Sports today. They are going to try to live stream everything that we have home. We have swimming, basketball, bowling is away. Wrestling is away for the next 2 weeks. So hopefully we will be able to live stream as many games. And I'm working with parents, coaches, and facilities to try and do like a Facebook live stream for our middle school students. So then that way parents can at least be able to see it like on Facebook Live if we have a iPad, tripod, and everything so that they can set up. But that was that decision. And again, I'm hoping we'll revisit it by the end of next week. And then if we implement some additional steps so that we can have fans or limited fans after that, that would be great. But our goal is to be able to have our kids finish out their seasons.
Yeah.
So that was, I think, where the decision came from.
Any questions from Ms. Frankie?
Yes. I mean, and this may not just be to you, but to everyone who was a part of that, with the suggestion that came from Dr. Conti. Since that took place before our discussion that we had and all that we have found out on Thursday, I'm wondering if it's feasible to allow 2 spectators, per player, as I've seen. I think we've talked about this, but as I've seen at other tournaments that's going on right now across the city, and that's successfully being done, if we're able to do something like that.
I'm open to having that discussion. If we can start it tomorrow, I can reach out to Dr. Conti tonight. I just know that if and when we do go back to having spectators, there's going to be a very strict mask policy. So I think that's the biggest thing of like,
Agreed.
everybody, if they want to come in, then we've got to be willing to wear the masks
Agreed.
and wear them properly. But I can reach out to Dr. Conti this evening and set up something with him, Principal Mans, possibly Don Golden, and our nurse if we need
And
to.
I'd like to be part of that conversation. also.
Okay,
Thank you. Ms.
yeah, I can include everyone. I don't.
Thanks.
Thanks, Ms. Frankie.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm sure there are more questions.
I have probably, hi, I'm Miss Scott, and I'm gonna be the thorn in your side tonight. Sorry, everybody. I do have some more questions, and I'm not sure if Mr. Wilson or Ms. Golden would be the one to speak to these, but specifically having to do with what are the specific disciplinary actions being taken for students and or staff who don't comply with safety protocols like wearing masks appropriately, social distancing in the building, et cetera. I, for one, feel like if we're going to have kids in the building right now, my own child included, I want to know that everyone is being incentivized to follow the rules as much as possible. And if they are unwilling to follow those rules, they don't get to be in that building. I would like to propose that a first offense gets sent to the office and a second offense gets sent home. Anyone else have feelings on that?
I'm sorry.
Not wearing masks appropriately.
Got it.
We've seen all the data. We've talked to our medical professionals. We know how much more virulent this particular strain is. And the only way that we can continue to safely have any scholars in the building, regardless of vaccination status, is to make sure that they are being protected from one another's germs.
Yeah.
And if that's not happening, at the very least, we can't do anything else. And we know we've talked, Mr. Wilson has talked at length about the data, about how learning loss is affecting our scholars from having to be virtual or hybrid, and that those are not ideal situations. And so in the effort to try to provide our scholars with the best opportunity for educational advancement, we need to make sure that everyone is in compliance. And I don't want to demonize kids, especially if, I know there are kids that have behavioral issues or maybe have developmental issues that make it harder for them to comply with the masking. And I want to be sensitive to that. But for those who do not, it is imperative that they're wearing masks appropriately.
Yeah, I know our administrators have been clear about the importance of behavior in our buildings. Principals, teachers, and students all wearing masks properly and everything that goes along with this. It's imperative. So I know that point's been made, and I know the group is diligent about trying that. Following up on Ms. Scott's idea of what do you do for those folks that are not complying? What is it we can do to get them to comply? Other than please just get vaccinated. Everybody, please just get vaccinated. We wouldn't be having this discussion. All right, couldn't help myself. Back to Ms. Scott's question.
Well, part of her point, it is, like, as you mentioned, I know that that's been emphasized at the administrative level. And it varies with teacher to teacher too. I mean, we can say that and have that on paper, which it's necessary, but I'm not gonna lie, I get tired of saying, put your mask up, put your mask up, put your mask up, all day, every day. And some teachers that I've spoken to, either they're saying that's the last thing, that I want to focus on because of all that's going on in the classroom. So you have one who may weigh in on it a lot, to the point that they're going to write you up. And then you have one who may say, as long as you're engaged in class, maybe I'm not catching it, I'm not seeing it. It's so different from class to class. So I just wanted to throw that part out there. But I just want to make sure that we also include the emphasis on encouraging our parents to continue to have that kind of conversation and to make sure that we as parents are stressing it. I'm finding myself even to my kids, like when you get on the bus, you have to have it on. You have to put it above your nose. Like, just us making sure that we're just as vigilant as the school is, because we're responsible for this as well, right?
Right. So I'm going to chime in on what you said, Bridget, because I think this is kind of half of your pie. Parental control. It's your parents' duty to teach your kids what COVID is, how it spreads in your child's own fashionable way. I'm baffled right now, and I'll leave the rest of that alone, but it's a parent's responsibility to show their child how to carry him and herself, or herself, pardon my verbiage, properly in this day and time. It is a parent's responsibility to provide hand sanitizer to his or her child and assure that they know how to use it properly. Even though kids stray, I get it. Some kids will never, we do have special needs, and I get that, but I'm not talking on that population. I'm just talking about the everyday practices that we need to perform at home as parents. It's basically taking responsibility for your children. And I'm going to close right there. Okay. Thank you for listening.
I know we, confirmed with Mr. Finney that we have PPE available in buildings. So if it's a matter of getting your hands on those masks, we have them for your child. Do not hesitate to ask your child's teacher if they can send a handful home with you so that they can have them for their bus ride. I think we have enough to provide that. We don't want your child's lack of a mask to be the reason they don't come to school. We have that for them, but it is imperative that it is ingrained in them that has to be worn at all times. We cannot provide safe instruction without everyone, what were the 4 things Dr. Conti mentioned? It was frequent testing, contact tracing, distancing, sanitization of the space, mask wearing, and vaccination is the #1 element that protects folks. So I asked Dr. Conti on Thursday's call if there was data on what percentage of school-age kids had taken advantage of the ability to be vaccinated. My child is fully vaccinated. If you have a child and you're on the fence about being vaccinated, please reach out to me and I will happily share our experiences. But only 30% of kids from 5 to 11 have gotten vaccinated. If you want your kids to be in school right now, if you want your kids to not have learning loss, please consider everything you can do as a family to protect your child. That includes having them wear masks appropriately and getting vaccinated. My next order of questions is all mostly for Mr. Wilson, but
Ms. Scott, let me
yes, go ahead.
interject. Ms. Creech brought up the idea of, how do we get kids to understand the importance of wearing your mask? When you're talking to Andrew tomorrow, he might have some thoughts on how we can message what it is that needs to be said to get people to understand this. So
Okay.
if you'd add that, that'd be I think a good takeaway from that. Mr. Finney.
I know it was mentioned about eating in classrooms. I'm not a fan of that. Some of our classrooms are getting ruined already because of all the eating in the classrooms. We just spent over $49 million at Dixon. It's horrible. If we're gonna do that to high school, we just got done spending, what, $94 million? I'm worried about them classrooms being ruined. And the third and most important thing is, if we're gonna require students eating classrooms, what that means is, because we have no subs, we don't have enough staff. So what that means is, anybody that's working second shift or third shift, I'm gonna have to bring them in early to cover lunches, because one custodian can't handle the building with all that trash on every classroom. It'd be too much. So those people are gonna be working extra hours, and then we're expecting them to stay overnight to clean their areas to be ready for the following day. It's fine for a while, but a body only can handle so much. Then you're gonna deal with, again, sickness or even injuries, and then we're gonna be short employees. So I would like us to keep that in mind as well.
Mr. Finney, do you have, in your professional opinion, a better idea for how we can keep the overcrowding of scholars in big areas like the cafeteria and those types of things? How we can meet that need without having them eat in the classrooms? Because I'm open to other suggestions.
I understand. I think it's just something that administration and all of us are gonna have to sit down to see if we can spread out lunches a little bit more. Maybe
Like we
have-
did last year.
Yeah. I think that's something that we should look at, opposing the eating in our classrooms. Classrooms are supposed to be for teaching, and they shouldn't have to sit in a dirty classroom when they're spilling milk all over the place, or pop or chips all over the place. We want a clean classroom, just like we want clean classroom. We want heat in our classrooms. We want air conditioning in our classrooms so they can learn. They're not going to learn if all this stuff is laying around in their classrooms either.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mr. Finney.
Thank you.
Ms. Boyd.
Good evening. I just wanted to address one of Ms. Scott's inquiries. You were asking about how staff would be held accountable in terms of COVID safety protocols. We do follow progressive discipline. Our principal should be following that. It's in part of the professional contract, verbal, written, and then further disciplinary action up to and including termination. So that should be followed immensely regarding safety.
Thank you.
masks.
I appreciate that. And
Absolutely.
I'd love to implement something on a smaller scale for scholars too, just to make sure. And I'm not a disciplinarian as a parent, like that's just not my personality. But I think when it comes to public health issues, we need to really come down hard to make sure we're doing everything we can to keep our kids and other people, the community's kids safe and as safe as we possibly can.
From a personal note, I can mention today, my daughter who attends the high school, she got in a car with me. I said, oh, that mask is below your nose. What's going on? It needs to be above. She says, oh, you sound like the teachers. All they do all day is pull the mask up, pull the mask up. So I want to send some kudos out to our teachers because they are addressing it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Good to know.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Angel.
Father, while you're still up,
Sure.
our staffing, how's our staffing looking?
Well, staffing, we have the majority of our positions are filled, and we've received some resignations over the past month that we're actively filling that will be put before the board this month for approval for those individuals to start. In terms of substitutes, I mean, it's an all over problem. We just do not have them. Right now, I do have building subs assigned to all the buildings except for Dixon. The individual we had there just didn't work out. So I am working with Kelly Service to get someone assigned there. But as far as day-to-day absences, we can't keep up with the number of absences that we are receiving. I mean, just today alone, the high school reported, I don't have an exact number, but I'm sure it was almost double digits in terms of folks who are quarantining or whose children contracted COVID or were exposed over the break. And I shared this with Mr. Belmont earlier. We're working off of Christmas numbers. The New Year's numbers haven't even come in yet from this past weekend. So I expect the number to increase.
Anything else from Ms. Boyd? Okay,
you,
thank
Angel.
you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
So, Ms. Scott, your point on how do we get students to comply with the mask? How are we going to leave that? What's our next step?
Well, I
What do you
think when we're putting together this new and improved COVID, whatever we're calling ourselves, response team, or committee or unit or whatever, I think that the first things that we need to figure out once we are a collective is what is the specific criteria that we're using to like follow this stuff with? And along with that, while we're in this sort of heightened state of Omicron spread, I don't know if we want to call that code red, green, blue, who knows? Like we're just borrowing from 2 years ago when this all started. I don't know. We need to determine that we're calling it something and that we're demarcating what that level of threat means and what our response to it means in that level of threat. So while we're in the team or code red or whatever, the expectation is this, and it's 3 strikes, you're out or whatever. And we need to, I'm, again, a board member. I am not a school principal. I am not a person whose job it is to make these decisions. I think we should absolutely be having conversations with our school principals and the disciplinarians in the buildings to ask what is effective in terms of disciplinary tactics for their student population, because I think it's going to vary by grade level. And I think we need to make sure that that is actually happening.
Okay, so when we get the group put together, we're gonna follow up on your thoughts. Okay, what else concerning?
I just wanted
Ms.
to
Reed.
say that when it comes to sending children home, like any type of learning loss, regardless of what it's for, I think we need to reach out and find out about the legal ramifications for something like that. I don't know. I think that when we discuss this, we need to reach out to like the state and also the solicitor to find out how that will be a challenge for us to, take action on.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, anything else on COVID?
Yes, I have several things
Okay.
about, well, a lot of parents are concerned about why they can't just keep their kids home and have them learning remotely. And so I'd love if Mr. Wilson, Mr. Wilson, can come up and speak about the following 3 points. How instructional days are calculated and what counts and does not count as an instructional day. What the state of emergency 2 years ago meant for a district's ability to make decisions about how they present academics versus now. And thirdly, the options for families who do not feel it's safe to send their scholars.
Absolutely. Happy to speak to all of those things. Good evening again, everybody. So first and foremost, I know that there were some comments on social media earlier today that said that families that chose to keep their students home today would be counted as an unexcused absence. I want to clear that up as misinformation. Students and families that are staying home because of quarantine specifically, but also because of fears of Omicron, are counted as part of our QT absenteeism code, which is an absence, but it's an excused absence. So it does not lead to any kind of letters for unexcused absences. It doesn't lead to magistrate action, and there are no magistrates that are taking action on student absences for families that are remaining out due to Omicron. Now, I will also say though that I am proud of the fact that 2 years ago we were able to become a one-to-one district so that all of our educators could put the learning resources and tools and assignments from their classes on Google Classroom so that students that miss a day or 5 days or even 10 days can still have access to all their assignments. That is not the same as them having synchronous in-person instruction though. So we do highly encourage families that plan to stay out for extended periods of time, I would say anything more than 5 days, to explore the WOA option. I know that this board has mentioned a time or two before the potential for going back to a hybrid option. And I know that from our data, I just got Keystone data on December 22nd, hybrid and virtual instruction do not work for our scholars as a whole. And we need to, as the Secretary of Education stated, as the Mayor of New York stated, as the Secretary of Education for Pennsylvania stated, we need to default to in-person learning. And what we have in place now is a world in which those scholars whose families want to go back to school, which appears based on our attendance to be the majority of our scholars, can learn in school. And those who would prefer to stay home and get assignments via Google Classroom, they're not being punished for that. I don't think that it's high quality instruction. but they're not being punished for that. Those who choose to remain online or remain at home for long periods of time should move to WOA, the online academy. To be completely frank, I don't think that's as good as the instruction our educators provide either, but it is a good option for some families. And if the priority is remaining at home versus going to school and receiving the instruction from our amazing educators, then I would recommend that as well. So those are the options that are out there right now. We know that our scholars who took the Keystone exam, we lost a whole lot of proficiency on that exam. So specifically speaking to biology, we went from having in biology in spring of 2019, 24% of our scholars proficient or advanced to 11% for the spring of 2021. And that data gets real bad when we start breaking it down by ethnicity, which I'm happy to do here, or I'm happy to do in a committee presentation. But we know that our scholars, and specifically our scholars who are traditionally underrepresented, are really, really harmed. And I like really harmed feels like a really unprofessional and uneducated way to put it, but they are detrimentally harmed by virtual instruction. And I do want to also name, I know that it was mentioned earlier that there's a belief out there that we don't have any specific data or guidance that we're following in terms of when we might go to virtual instruction. And I want to also squelch that misinformation, because we are very adamantly following the CDC and Department of Health guidelines that speak to, you don't even think about going virtual until you've reached 5% of students and staff, enrollment and staff are confirmed positive cases. That's public information on the Department of Health website and on the CDC website. The numbers for us then would be at Edgewood 31, at Wilkins 25, at Turtle Creek 29, at Dixon 41, and at the high school 56. Those are the recommended numbers of cases, of positive confirmed cases, that we would need to have in each of those buildings, as Pittsburgh Public did with their 12 buildings that they went virtual, to be able to consider going virtual. Or, as Ms. Boyd mentioned, if we had a staffing crisis and we had a full confidence that we could not staff our buildings, then we could also consider virtual. Those are the only two options from the Department of Health and CDC for why a school, building specific or district specific, would go virtual. So I don't want anyone on the board nor anyone at home to think that the decision to not go virtual was something that was not based on data or facts or medical expertise.
Thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr.
Much
Wilson.
appreciated. I like that data. Thank you. I don't like it,
sure.
but I appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am.
I appreciate you disambiguating all of those concerns that I brought to you, because I came rapid fire at you, and I appreciate you. I just wanted to say that out loud. Thank you.
All right, anything else from Mr. Wilson?
I have a question related to the virtual instruction.
Yes, sir.
It's obviously not as quality as in person, but have we looked at why it is not, why it's not so sufficient?
So
what are the specifics in terms of that? And how can we actually make it better when inevitably we might have to go virtual again?
A great question, and also a great point, right? With the way that Omicron is spiking, the idea that we will be virtual, either district-wide or building by building, is not out of the realm of possibility, and is definitely a plausible future that we could be looking at. And I will say that the data that we have in terms of absenteeism and in terms of formative assessments from classrooms is that when we go virtual, kids disappear. So it's not that the virtual instruction is of lower quality. I will state that both of my children, one's in 3rd grade and one's in 6th grade now, last year when they were virtual, their grades actually improved when they were virtual. And they were on synchronously for their 7.5 hours every day. And the majority of the scholars who are attending synchronously online every day actually did really well. When you think about the additional data disparities that we have, and I don't have specific SES numbers on our scholars, but it appears from what Power School has that our white scholars who are also traditionally and historically, at least demographically, are more affluent scholars, so our more affluent white scholars actually did better on virtual than many of them do when they're in person. Now that is not playing out this year because luckily we've learned a whole lot about how to instruct multiple people and multiple demographics and multiple scholars. However, virtual instruction in and of itself, I don't believe is lower quality than what we have in the classrooms. What does come out in virtual instruction is that there's a lower expectation that everyone participate. And so we just have scholars that disappear. And any educator that you speak to that taught us last year, that taught in our district last year will tell you that on any given day, if they had between 50 and 75% of the scholars on their roster, that was a good day. And even those scholars had videos off and had headphones in and were doing all kinds of other things. We all know that multitasking is not actually multitasking. It's just doing multiple things in very tiny increments so that you can't actually focus on it. But being in front of a screen contributes to and promotes multitasking. I can't sit in front of my computer without having 2 screens and 2 phones up so that I think that I'm doing 5 things at once. And then I get to 5 o'clock and go, what did I do today? And that's exactly what a lot of our scholars do. When they're in a classroom and there's a teacher in front of them, then they are forced to focus on the things that they're supposed to be learning.
Eddie, I have one question, circling back to WOA. I've heard from a number of parents that upon looking into it, they were waitlisted for WOA. Can you speak to that? Or is that only happening at certain grade levels? Because I want it to be a viable option for parents who don't feel safe bringing their kids back or have medically fragile family members at home or something of that nature. I think it's imperative that we have that option. What can we do if there aren't slots available?
Yep. So I can't speak to WOA, but I know that Ms. Golden can. I know that we talked about that as well earlier today.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thanks, Ms. Golden. You guys are all color
Thank you, Eddie.
coordinated with your goals today.
Stiller game. That's like Stiller Monday night.
Oh,
They're
I
not
don't
gonna
follow
go any
sports
further,
ball.
but
I'm keeping everybody from sports ball, sorry.
that's okay. It's probably not gonna be worth watching anyway, but I like to support them anyways. With regards to your question regarding WOA, as you all know, we do have a program K through 12. At this point, our K to 5, we still have room available with those spots for those students. As far as our 6 through 12, we had to kind of put limitations on that because the numbers of students primarily with the 9 through 12 were really high. At this point, through grades K through 12, we probably have close to 200, if not more than 200 kids in our WOA program at this point. Dr. White is looking at cases, each student and parent request on a case-by-case basis. So we haven't stopped it, but we have put some limitations on it. And one of the other things that we have to look at is based on the new teacher contract, those seat numbers in some of those courses. And so once we get a handle on those particular classes where we may need to add additional teachers or ask for additional teachers to take caseloads, we may be able to open it up a bit more.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Mr. Wilson, again, thank you for the data that you provided. I think that is very helpful and educational. I didn't know all that information. If it's possible to put something like that together to share just the facts of how we're coming about our decisions and how we go virtual. Everything that you shared, I think could help to give some level of comfort and knowledge and understanding for our parents. So if that's something that you can share, would be great.
I can do that. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you. All righty. What else?
I have a few follow-up questions. I'm not sure who to address these to, specifically related to COVID testing. So as we heard from our medical professionals and as we've talked about at length here, part of that whole package of keeping kids as safe as possible and scholars and staff as safe as possible, not just the little kids, all the kids, is making sure that we're catching cases as early as we can, making sure that people are testing. So I know pool testing is happening, but who is responsible for administering those? Because like I said, there's not a nurse in my daughter's school right now, and she hasn't come home telling me about pool testing for months. So I want to make sure now more than ever, those are taking place, they're being implemented, and that we're doing everything within our buildings that we can, because ultimately it's about controlling as many factors as we can to keep everyone as safe as we can. I'm sorry, Mr. Wilson, this is you too.
No, it's okay. It's not actually me, but it's as a parent that was, indirectly connected. I can speak to pool testing. Pool testing is another thing that was organized and run by a former member of this administration. We really hope to see somebody in that chair soon so that we can have some answers and somebody that's spearheading that in the district. I know that pool testing is run by members of a team from the state. So other people, an outside agency comes into the building and runs pool testing. I know that that's what's happening with Nate and Ellie, with my 3rd and 6th grader. They're not at Edgewood, but Turtle Creek and Dixon. So my understanding is that that's what's happening at all 5 buildings. In terms of any other questions around pool testing, I can't answer anything except to say that our percentage of scholars who have signed up for pool testing is a lot lower than we would like it to be. We know from Dr. Conti and Mr. Morris and every health expert that in order for pool testing to work, we need to get everybody in the pool. And right now, I don't know what the percentage is, but I know it's a lot lower than 100. And we need to have more scholars signed up for pool testing. Parents out there that are listening, please sign your scholar up for pool testing. Board members, if you speak to community members, please get their children signed up for pool testing, because the policy around pool testing and then the policy that districts are moving towards, and that I hope that we are able to move towards, of test to stay, requires that everyone participate. And so then also speaking then to testing, just continue to speak to testing. Dr. Conti was on last Thursday able to commit 500 rapid tests to the district that should arrive on Wednesday. So we're excited about that. And we should be able to, throughout this week, and really the team that you just named, Ms. Scott, should be able to put together what the policy is going to be in terms of test to stay, which then will help us to determine which scholars do need to isolate and which don't, depending on vaccination status, et cetera. But we do not currently have enough tests, nor, as you mentioned, capacity in terms of staff to run a test to stay policy, even if we had one in place.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
Sounds like we have a lot to continue discussing through committees this week as well. And getting those of us who have volunteered to be a part of the COVID response unit, or whatever we're calling it, COVID response unit, I'm calling it that. That's what it is now, everyone. It's CRU. Helps me remember it. We need to get to work immediately to start implementing all of these things to make sure that we can keep kids as safe as possible. I appreciate you guys indulging in my long list of notes I took prior to coming to this meeting, and all of our administrators who took the time to so thoroughly answer my concerns. I appreciate that.
Okay. Any other questions on that?
Yeah,
go ahead.
I do have some questions. One, we did hear from Dr. Pert. We've heard from her multiple times regarding social distancing or the lack thereof in the cafeterias. We've also heard from parents. My concern is that, when she spoke about these concerns, I didn't hear any support for her, meaning there were no suggestions given to her. She's asking for support, and also parents are concerned about the overcrowding in the cafeterias and their children eating in the cafeterias. She needs support. She's asking for support. She needs that. And we need to address that tonight as well.
Anybody have any thoughts on that? Ms. Reed said the distancing in the cafeteria. What can be done about that?
Are there other spaces available? And this is sort of, part of the bigger conversation we were just having with Mr. Finney to break out. I mean, I know when the weather's nice, they have that courtyard off of the back of the cafeteria that could be utilized, but it's the coldest day so far of the school year today. And I don't think it's advisable to have kids out there in what feels like 15-degree weather. So are there other spaces in that building that are not currently being utilized where a portion of the scholars can go for their lunch? Or is it a matter, I know that they have a really different schedule at Dixon, right? Because they're like in their teams and they have many more periods throughout the day than my second grader does, for example. So how can we address that issue without negatively impacting their ability to attend all of their courses?
And what Mr.
That's
Finney
something
brought
that
up,
the crew-
what's that?
I said, that's something that the crew should be talking about, right?
Oh, right.
Yeah, that's absolutely something for crew. Yeah. Yeah, but also to address some of the specific issues to that building, I know that Dr. Part had put out a call for concerned parents to get their clearances so that they can volunteer in the building. Everyone has opinions and everyone wants to suggest fixes, but no one wants to show up and actually do the work, right? So I hope that that's happening. I haven't heard much about it, although to be fair, I am on social media less and less these days. It's just not good for me. But if you are a parent who wants to be a part of that and who doesn't know how to get started with that, please feel free to reach out to me or any of my fellow board members via our email addresses. That's the best way to reach me. I think we need to really focus on, especially at that building where there are so many kids in such tight quarters, because I think that's probably our biggest hurdle in terms of our 5 buildings to overcome when it comes to implementing appropriate social distancing.
Ms.
When-
Reed, were there any other particular issues at Dixon along with the distancing at lunchtime?
I mean, the concern is that if we're hearing that this is a highly transmissible strain, and we have an overcrowded building, and we have a principal saying, and before anyone steps in, I've already heard, there's no doubt that in-person learning, in-person instruction is what's best for the students, right? We've already heard that. There's no doubt. I totally understand that. I get that. With that being said, she did say she's in favor of going virtual. And again, if this is a highly transmissible variant, she's having difficulty socially distancing the children. Why would we not go virtual? I mean, I've been very clear from the start. I'm fine with, especially since we're coming off of a break, the school district, switching to remote learning. But even if we're not going to consider it for other buildings, what about Dixon? She needs help. She's not getting the support she needs. She stated this multiple times. Parents are concerned. So what are we going to do about that? I've already said what I'm in favor of, but what are we going to do about that? Also, again, I don't need to hear that in-person learning is what's best. We've already said that. I get that. What are we going to do about Dixon? These parents can't keep asking questions. And we have a principal who's saying she needs support. What are we going to do about that?
Mr. Finney?
And I don't know, I'm just thinking out of the realm here. So are we able to make our school hours longer in order for the kids to have, so we can have more lunches? So we'll use Dixon for an example. We got 900 kids in a school. So if we have 7 lunches, spread those 7 lunches out, that divides it down to 100 kids in a cafeteria. So I don't know if that's something that we're able to do or not, extend our school hours.
Transportation.
How long is lunch at Dixon?
I don't have those with me. I'm sorry. I don't know them
Okay.
off by heart.
25 minutes? Okay, thank you.
And just to clarify, are there gym classes going on during the lunches as well? So the gym is used? Okay, I was just asking.
So the,
Sounds like they better get their heads, we have a lot to, you guys have a lot to wrap your head around.
Yeah.
This is-
And I think that it was mentioned, just to clarify, I thought that the suggestion was a hybrid, not necessarily virtual.
She wanted virtual, but then she said,
She would
you know,
agree with
she,
hybrid.
yeah, she's also in favor.
I just
of
wanted to throw
hybrid.
that out.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing is it seems like we have a building that is at capacity, which does not afford the opportunity to have appropriate distancing. And even the solution we just heard was creative, but I'm not sure, is it something that we should be thinking creatively, but perhaps virtually while we do that. So it seems like, where do we have what's the option in regards to a highly transmissible variant? Not the lack of ability to provide distancing and, simply saying that this building should be remote because of that. And then we think about ways to get back to the ideal in-person instruction, but do it in a creative manner.
well,
I'd like someone to speak to that potentially.
Bob,
We do a survey to find out what kids want to stay home with their education. Maybe our better educators want to stay home and do their schooling at home. And then maybe that percentage will go.
So following up to one of the, like, when I asked Mr. Wilson to speak about that, I don't know legally if we can just give folks an option to learn remotely from home indefinitely without there being specific criteria and boundaries in place. I think it sets a kind of a dangerous precedent when we do not operate as a virtual charter or virtual school, to have scholars have the option to just opt out of brick and mortar and learn from home. And as Mr. Wilson stated, I see him nodding his head over there, scholars at home by and large were not thriving, and without accountability there to make sure that they are the ones participating in the classes and doing the work, I think that creates some dangerous blurred lines when it comes to academic outcomes. And if I'm not mistaken, I think some of the hesitancy around taking Dixon virtual more than it already has been this year is because it's also our school that's most underperforming. Is that correct, Mr. Wilson? So the concern is that the kids there already aren't meeting academic standards, and having them miss even more school is not going to help them achieve those goals. So I think we need to be focusing the conversation on how can we provide better opportunities for them in that building and meet their needs. Does that mean adding additional spaces on the exterior that are heated? That I don't know. I don't know what that looks like, but that's the conversation I think we need to be having.
Already working on it.
can't.
It's not gonna be able to happen.
Right,
There's
we
not
were
enough
already
property.
told.
There's not enough property. to fit
Right.
regularly.
Okay.
I mentioned that before.
What about tenting, like how outdoor restaurants were doing with heat lamps, just to solve the cafeteria issue in the short term? Is that an option? Is that something we could do? I mean, I think we really need to get creative about our approach to this and be looking at it from all angles. I don't think any of our kids deserve to have their education suffer more than it already is. And especially that is a very tender age at which folks are likely to be less interested in academics to begin with. And that we're already seeing that the data supports that those scholars are less achieving now than they were before the pandemic, but also in comparison to our other buildings. So I just don't want to, as the chair of curriculum and as someone who cares very strongly for academics, I want to make sure we're not leaving kids behind. And I also want them to be safe. Those two things are the primary priorities to me.
Is this a discussion that should be had while we're keeping our scholars safe by remaining virtual? We're making the point that
Well, I think we don't have all the data because we don't know how many of those kids are opting to stay home because of parental choice right now today. And we don't know how many of those kids that were just listening to this call and are now going to try to get into WILA. I think we need more information before we can say for certain right now. I think this needs to be a huge priority, though. That building is the one I'm most concerned about.
and also it was stated earlier, per the guidelines, there's a specific percentage of everybody in a particular building that tests positive. When you hit that threshold, then you consider virtual. We're not there yet. which is the good news.
No, I understand that district-wide, but I think the point that's trying to be made is that we've made Dixon virtual for a myriad other reasons this school year alone. Why can't we just say that it could be virtual,
Yeah,
that building?
Well, that could be so, but just because that's been done before doesn't make it right now. We need to, if we're sticking to guidelines, we're sticking to guidelines. And it was stated earlier, there's a particular percentage of everybody in a building that needs to test positive, and then you say we're going virtual. And we're not there yet. That's the good news.
But the challenge with that building, if I'm understanding, is that the capacity already is too high, so that percentage would not necessarily be applicable if we're already out of, I want to say out of ratio, for lack of a better word.
No,
We
no,
have a
percentage is
higher number.
percentage. Percentage is percentage. And yes, we are at capacity in that building, but somehow Dr. Pert's making it work so far. And we all know that Omicron is highly transmissible, and that's why we're monitoring this, as stated before, every day.
So I have absolutely no authority over any facilities, nor how to tell Dr. Pert or anybody else how to run their building. And I would not assume to do so. From an academic perspective, it is my understanding, based on the teaming schedule, that lunches are only during 5th and 6th period throughout the day. And so we have an 8-period day, and to move to virtual instruction because of a quarter of the day needs to be rethought, to me would seem academically inadvisable. And I would highly recommend that the crew, whoever's on the crew, look at 5th and 6th period in Dixon to see what spaces are available during that time. I know that it was mentioned that like PE is happening, but I don't know if anything's happening on the stage. And if kids are in the cafeteria from 7th grade or 8th grade, then their 7th and 8th grade classrooms are empty. And I understand that Mr. Penny doesn't want food in classrooms, but this was a resolution that had to be found at Turtle Creek, which is already also our largest elementary building, where then they just created additional spaces, which are used for the rest of the day for instruction. But during that small block of time that is lunch, were found elsewhere. And I understand that the powers that be that probably should have helped support Dr. Pert in finding that out and figuring that out. I understand she hasn't had the support she needs, right, to speak to what you said, Ms. Reed. But I don't think that means that there's not a solution.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson.
Dr. Pert, do you want to speak to this situation before we sort of move on, or do you have anything that you want to add? Sorry, I don't mean to put you on blast, but I just wanted to give you the opportunity to speak for yourself.
No, you're fine. Everyone makes great points regarding this. However, we have looked at the extra space that's in the building. And then we have to take into consideration that teachers are covering for other people. So teachers will meet together sometimes in their rooms, and then also they're doing different planning times during that specific time. So however, we have looked at all options. I keep asking for a 3rd floor. If you all give us a 3rd floor, we'll be doing good. We asked for also the trailers as well. We just need more space. And so the issue is that I'm seeing is that we're not in compliance per the CDC guidelines, and we have exhausted everything. So I just want us to be transparent with parents, like I was when I had the assembly, when parents came, and I basically told them like, look, hey, look around, you see what we're dealing with. So I think that's one of the things that we have to take into consideration, that, you know, with this transmissible disease that's going around, we have to consider the safety of our students. And I understand that instruction is important, and we're doing everything that we can. The teachers are doing everything that they can. However, that social distancing is a problem at Dixon.
Dr. Pert, how are your efforts going recruiting parent volunteers?
They're going very well. However, we are having parents that don't follow through with the clearances as of We have one right here. We have Miss Saunders right here, who wants to volunteer, and she's been doing an excellent job with that. This is one of the parents who has been following through with that. So I know when I have put it out there for parents to be able to come and volunteer, I received several emails, I think about 15.
About 15.
Yeah, about 15. However, none of those parents have followed through. So parents, if you're listening, we still need volunteers. We welcome volunteer. We welcome that help. However, they have to go through steps in order to be clear at Dixon, but we do welcome volunteers.
And getting the clearances takes a few weeks. So
Yes.
it's not something that I'm going to do it tomorrow. Here we go.
Sometimes months to
Yeah.
get
Yes.
this stuff back,
Yeah.
especially at this time of year.
So they don't take that long anymore.
Oh, really?
You can get your,
Is it bad?
criminal
Okay, so
recommend, your child abuse, maybe a week at the most. And the FBI probably the same.
Well, thanks for the
2 weeks
clarification. That's
probably.
encouraging.
Not even that long?
If they're Wednesday, they provide you with the URL number, you can have results as soon as Wednesday. The state comes back immediately, like this call for mentioned. Now, if you could take a week if it's mailed, if there are any issues, but generally you get those results back in 24 hours.
Okay.
So
thank
it's
you,
not
Ms.
a
Boyd.
whole month
Right.
like it used to be at all.
Yeah.
I do know that part of the turnoff for some parents was that for some reason, some of them it's flagged as like that TB test.
Yeah.
So that seemed to delay some that I've heard from. They didn't realize they had to take, I think you might be one of them, they didn't realize they had to take that, to go in and get that test done.
So the TB test portion is only if you're going to be volunteering, I think for 10 or more hours. But is that it, Ron? I think that's.
Yeah, but the
15.
Raptor pauses, like you can't get past it. So if you put in like a Word document that says, I will not be volunteering more than 10 hours and upload that into the Raptor system, it'll let you bypass the TB.
Because then they won't have
Listen
to
to that.
worry about
Tell
it.
everybody that. To tell everybody.
All right,
Yeah,
sounds good.
it's just the Raptor system doesn't let you get past that one point without putting in results from the TB test. So.
Well, I do want to tell the parents out there who want to volunteer, email us. We have a great secretary there, Miss Chris, and she will definitely follow through with you as well as Miss Hawthorne as well. And if we can get that third floor, we'll be good, okay?
Okay. Thank you,
Thank you,
Dr.
Dr.
Kerr.
Kerr.
Okay. Ms. Scott, anything else on your list?
That's my list of notes
That's your
and
list.
other extraneous
Okay.
thoughts that came up.
Alrighty, I think we've
Thank you.
covered the
Scott.
discussion. Steve, is there anybody in the public that would like to ask questions?
Well, public comment isn't questions, right? Like as per.
Well, they can, if you'd like to make a comment on this subject, please raise your hand and we'll allow you to do that.
Hello,
Hello.
this is Mrs. Turner. So in sitting here listening, I've taken some notes and I wrote some things down. And so I wanted to touch on a few points. So part of your problem is going to be trust. A lot of us just don't trust you all. And that's just going to be that's just brutal honesty. I can't speak to everyone's experience, so I can only speak for myself. And I can tell you right now, we're in the negative with each other as it pertains to trust from me to, the district at large. So trust is going to be a lot of something that is going to need to be worked on because you're asking a lot of things of parents and we're not seeing the equality from the district as it pertains to what you guys. So I heard someone say something about, the kids and the mask policy and things of that nature. And I hear a lot of emphasis put on what the children do. And so to that, I'm going to say this. You could be the best parent in the entire world, but you cannot control who your child is when they're out of your eyesight. And if your child is a butthole, your child's just a butthole. And there's just nothing that can be done with that. That is not always on the parents. We were all kids once. And all our parents, I'm sure, did the best they could to raise us and the way that we should go. And some of us went that way, and some of us did what we wanted to do and took some zigzags and rerouted, made some U-turns before we got to where our parents wanted us to go. And some of us never made it at all. But that is not a knock at the parenting. Sometimes kids just gonna do what kids do. As far as this mask policy goes, the kids get tired and they get overwhelmed and they have anxiety, and everyone don't have a diagnosed mental health issue. So it's not that they don't want to wear the mask and they don't want to comply and they don't want to be safe, but sometimes they get sick of it, or they get bored, or they get fidgety, and they just want to breathe real air for 2 seconds outside of that mask. That does not mean that we have not taught our children at home the importance of wearing your mask, because I done told y'all what my life looks like right now. And so I implore my kids, and my kids are terrified to come back into that building. We talked about the cleanliness of the school. I heard everything that Mr. Finney had to say, and I turned around and I asked my kids, I said, hey, how confident are you in the cleanliness of your school? And I asked them individually away from each other so that one couldn't coerce the other one into feeling a certain type of way. And they both had the same answer of my elementary kids. We don't. I don't trust that the school is clean at all. Now, my daughter was a little more vocal in her feelings about it. She said, the only thing we use in our classroom is Clorox wipes. I said, so you do wipe your desk down at school? She said, yeah, we use Clorox wipes, but that's it. It's dusty. It's not, it's this, it's that. She just went on.
Ms.
She had a whole
Turner,
little
your
speech.
2 minutes has expired. Could you please wrap up?
Discipline. What are you going to do if the adults aren't following the masking and whatever policy? What's going to be the protocol for that? It can't always be about the children. We have to lead by example. Are you going to do that? I don't think that virtual learning is a great idea, but I also don't want to send my kids to the slaughter.
Okay, thank you.
I heard someone. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Who's next, Mr. Wilson?
Good evening, everyone. Before we start, I just wanted to say thank you to Ms. Scott and Ms. Curry. They seem to be the only two board members that actually seem to be listening when we complain. They take notes, they reply to calls and emails when they don't need to. I can't speak to the new board members because I really do not know you all yet. But here goes a couple of my concerns. I'm very insulted about how the board always seems to say it's the parents. There's a lot of parents I don't agree with in this district, but you can all stop with the nonsense. The parents don't really seem to care, because even the parents I don't agree with, I can say care about their children. We are doing the best we can to keep our kids safe, but everything is the pushback on the parents. There's more than enough blame to go around in this situation. And I keep on hearing the learning losses, the deficits. Look, riddle me this. Where was this outrage 4 years ago? Why is my daughter using the same exact book I used 20 years ago as a sophomore herself? I haven't been in 10th grade since 2001. So don't give me the nonsense about, what word, the kids are going to lose some education. They lose it over the summer, according to studies. They lose it this time, that time. So don't say virtual learning can't be implemented when we have a deadly pandemic going on. When the stakes were not that high, you all weren't worried about it. And if I was this negligent with my own child, you all would have childlined me by now. Because here it goes. If I beat my daughter up one time and a mandated reporter finds out about it, it gets reported. Are y'all waiting for families to start spinning and dropping from COVID before you actually say, maybe we should have closed the school? Because here goes the thing. This is on y'all at this point. You are the board. You were elected to do this job. Do it. Because I have to do my job as a parent. Moving on to this little advisory board for COVID. You all need a cross-section of everybody. I think you all are not very used to parents speaking up this loudly in a cross section. You all are used to the higher echelon. And now you're getting parents more like me, like, no, I don't care if I'm poor. I don't care if I'm black. I don't care if I'm not white and don't got money and live in Churchill. I have an opinion too. And you all don't seem to be very used to people like me saying, no,
Ms. Hamlet,
we're gonna do something.
your time has expired.
Oh, I can wrap it up. Y'all need to do something. There you go. That's it. Do something. I challenge you all.
Thank you. Okay.
Hi, it's Jessica Reed. I know you can't respond, but most of mine are questions, but I guess I'll just go through them and maybe get responses afterwards. So one thing, I heard Dr. Pert say that she has had parents interested in volunteering at Dixon, but they haven't submitted their clearances. I just want to do a quick follow-up. If there are volunteers who have already been through the HUG system and have submitted their clearances through HUGs, they submitted them to the school. And so I'm wondering what additional things Dr. Pert may need so that they can volunteer in Dixon, because when you go through HUGs and you submit your clearances through Raptor, that is supposed to give you approval to volunteer in any of the Woodland Hills school buildings. So that's my first question. I have a question for Mr. Finney. I know he mentioned that they're still short-staffed at Dixon, but I am pretty sure we're still short-staffed at Wilkins and as well, and have been since a custodian had a stroke quite some time ago. And now one of our absolute best custodians the district has ever seen retired in the fall. And I just don't think that Wilkins is at the number of custodians that it's supposed to have. And I'm, again, we were very spoiled because we had the best of the best at Wilkins in terms of custodians, but I know there wasn't much overlap, or maybe any overlap, with the new custodians that were hired to replace him. And I don't believe they've been trained enough because they're not doing the things that he used to do. And I guess, sorry if the teachers can't find the time to submit complaints on the daily, but I'll take some notes and I guess send some emails on their behalf in the coming days. But I know that many of the teachers at Wilkins, and I'm hearing possibly at Edgewood as well, have moved to having their students wipe down their desks at the end of each day because the desks were visibly dirty.
Ms. Reed, your time's expired. Can you wrap up, please?
Okay, sure. So the teachers are buying those wipes themselves. And so I'm wondering if they're going to be having the students do their jobs, if they could at least get the products to do it themselves. And same with the masks. Ms. Scott mentioned that the teachers would have masks maybe to send home if parents ask, but the teachers don't. The masks are in the office and at the entryway. And I know the school is handing out 50 to 100 a day, and that it's crazy. So I don't believe that the teachers actually have access to the supplies we supposedly have. And I'll wrap it up.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Reed. Anybody else, Mr. Wilson? That's it. Okay. Any closing comments? I'll share one. And this is directed to our residents and families generally. If you are pro-teacher, get vaccinated. If you are pro-child, get vaccinated. This all goes away if we all do that. Please. Thank you. We will adjourn to executive session to discuss personnel. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
That was quick. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Meeting adjourned.